Alright boys, welcome back to Bettrmma. I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody who's been liking the videos, commenting on the videos, and pulling up to the live streams. I really appreciate it. We are coming at you guys with the fights to make after UFC St. Louis. And I'm really excited about this because we got a lot of interesting outcomes from UFC St. Louis. We're going to bounce around from fighter to fighter, starting with Joaquin Buckley. Now, Joaquin Buckley should either fight Gilbert Burns or Sean Brady. He obviously needs to be moved up into the UFC welterweight rankings. Personally, I think Sean Brady will be a very good test to see how Buckley does against somebody with a grappling-based game plan in the welterweight division. I think it may be the tougher fight for Joaquin Buckley, whereas Gilbert Burns may be more opening to standing on the feet. And of course, Gilbert Burns is the older fighter, so the chances of Joaquin Buckley breaking down or KOing Gilbert Burns may be higher than if he was to KO Sean Brady. But either way, they're going to be very tough fights for Joaquin Buckley, and these two fights will really show how he does up against the tough, well-rounded competition in the top 10, top 5 range of the welterweight division. Moving on to Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now, Waldo Cortez Acosta had a great performance up against Robelis de Spain. They definitely need to shoot him up into the heavyweight rankings. He is most definitely deserving of a top 15 spot and a very good matchup. Me personally, I would like to see Waldo Cortez Acosta put up against Jailton Almeida. Now, a lot of people off the bat would think that Jailton would be able to just out-wrestle Acosta, but I was very surprised by how well Acosta was able to do on the ground versus Robelis de Spain, and I didn't realize that he had such a grappling base in his arsenal. So if he feels comfortable wrestling, I would like to see how he does against somebody of Almeida's caliber. Or we can give Waldo Cortez Acosta Tai Tuivasa. You know, Tai Tuivasa is barely hanging on to a ranking spot right now. Cortez Acosta would love to stand on the feet with Tai. So if Tai wants that puncher's chance and he doesn't want to go up against these grappling-based fighters, Cortez Acosta will give him those opportunities on the feet. And any stand-up fight with Tai Tuivasa in it is always entertaining. And Waldo Cortez Acosta always comes to fight. So those are two fights that I think would be very entertaining for him. Now, another matchup for him, this also goes into who Derrick Lewis should be fighting next. We might as well give Derrick Lewis Cortez Acosta. Cortez Acosta has showed that he is ready for the top 15. Derrick Lewis has proven throughout his career that he's not a top 5 prospect, but he is one of the best gatekeepers in the heavyweight division, and he's known for making every fight entertaining. Cortez the same way. He always has a style and a flair to his fighting style, so I think that would be a very entertaining matchup. If they don't give Derrick Lewis Acosta, I don't think they're going to look to move him up the rankings, so I say give him another up-and-comer coming up through the heavyweight ranks right now. I think a great test for Derrick Lewis would be Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin, as we know, trains with Tom Aspinall. He's on a bit of a win streak right now, and he just beat a big black motherfucker in Mo Usman. And now let's see if he can beat an even bigger, blacker motherfucker in Derrick Lewis. So yeah, I think that would be a great matchup, Mick Parkin and Derrick Lewis. Moving on to Charles Johnson. Had a very entertaining, solid performance against Jake Hadley. Really showed his head movement, his speed, and his feint game off. I would really like to see him next in an entertaining stand-up matchup with somebody like Sumudaerji. I know Sumudaerji has had some problems getting a matchup, either due to injury or otherwise, but he's got a ranking next to his name, and I think Charles Johnson would put on a very entertaining fight with Sumudaerji, given that they both like to stand up and trade on the feet. If they don't go the route of Sumudaerji and they're really looking to push Charles Johnson up the rankings, you could even give him Mateus Nicolau, given that Nicolau is on a 2-fight KO loss streak and Charles Johnson is up and coming through the ranks. That would be the best matchup for the division in terms of turning over and bringing in new talent to the ranks, but they'll most likely go with somebody like Matt Schnell, I feel like. We're going to move on to Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson, I feel like, is going to get the push to somebody in the top 15 or somebody right outside of that. So I'm thinking they may give Sean Woodson a Dan Ige. Of course, Sean Woodson poses a threat with those knees up the middle that he likes to throw. But Dan Ige is a very solid wrestler and has heavy hands himself. And Sean Woodson can get into a scrap, so I think that would be a very entertaining matchup. And if they don't want to go the route of giving Sean Woodson that top 15 matchup, and they give Dan Ige to somebody like Joe Anderson Brito, then give Sean Woodson Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr always comes to fight, and Sean Woodson, I think, would put on a very entertaining scrap with Nate. So yeah, that would be a great fight. Moving on to Esteban Rivabic. Now, Esteban Rivabic had a great knockout against Terrence McKinney. As we know about Rivabic, he doesn't fare well at all against grapplers, and given that he's in the lightweight division, that makes it very, very difficult in terms of matching him up with people that he can have success against. But he is a very entertaining fighter when the fight stays on the feet, and he's somebody that you can put on a preliminary card to get into a fun scrap. So I say, after a highlight reel knockout over a relatively well-known fighter like Terrence McKinney, we should give Esteban Rivabic a fight with Manuel El Loco Torres. This would be an absolute banger of a fight. Manuel Torres has got some hype behind him. He is a very, very ferocious finisher in the UFC lightweight division right now, and him and Rivabic would absolutely go to war on the feet. I think that would be a fight that some people would sleep on, but would be an absolute banger of a fight on the night. So yeah, I think they should go with Manuel El Loco Torres. If they have bigger plans for El Loco, then give Rivabic somebody like Ignacio Bahamondes, another young, talented, exciting striker. They'll stand on the feet with each other, and we could see who really deserves to move up into the prospect rankings. Moving on to Trey Waters. Now, Trey Waters got a good win over Billy Goff. It was the fight of the night. A lot of people are saying it could have went to Goff, but at the end of the day, they're both up-and-coming young fighters, so we need to see them tested against some other prospects. Given that Trey Waters is so tall, you know who we should put him up against? The guy who's just as tall as him in the welterweight division and also fought on the same card. Let's give Trey Waters Nursultan Ruziboyev. As we know, the UFC likes making these matchups when you have two very tall, lanky guys. They like to see who's the better out of the two of them. I think it would be a very entertaining matchup. After the fight that we saw Ruziboyev put on, he likes to stand up on the feet. As we know, that's Trey Waters' MO. So I think they would put a very good fight on, and we'll really find out who's the more skilled, well-rounded fighter of the two tall guys. If they don't go with Ruziboyev, I think a great next fight for Trey Waters will actually be Mike Malott. Now, that might be surprising to some of you guys, but they're trying to build up Mike Malott. They still want him to be a Canadian star. And how do you start to build him back up? By making his Canadian ass chop down a tall tree. So if they give Mike Malott the 6'5" Trey Waters, and Mike Malott is able to pull off a win there, it's a feather in Mike Malott's cap that can rebuild his prospect and Canadian star potential. I'm going to include here my next matchup for Billy Goff, because a lot of people think Billy Goff won the fight. I think the fight was very close. Both fighters were missing a lot of punches, but Billy Goff was definitely trying harder. He was constantly moving forward throughout the fight, and that's mainly the reason why people feel like he won that fight. I just wish Billy Goff learns from this performance and he learns to throw in more feints as he's walking his opponents down, because that will cause his opponents to counter early and then allow Goff to really turn the tables and find his openings in the future when he's facing a fight like that. That's something I would have told Billy Goff if I was in his corner during that fight. A perfect fight for Billy Goff will be Danny Barlow. Danny left-handed God Barlow. Hey, man, listen, man. They're going to put on a good scrap, man. I think Danny Barlow is an absolutely entertaining banger of a fighter. Loves to scrap. Billy Goff loves to do the same thing as well. They're two very young welterweight prospects. Both of them need to prove themselves in the UFC. And that fight would be an absolute gem on any fight night or even pay-per-view prelim card. Now, next up, I think this is the fighter that a lot of people are wondering who he will fight next, and this goes for Chase Hooper. A lot of people have some very big expectations for him, all because he ended up beating a kickboxer in an MMA fight. I think a lot of people are overrating his performance, even though I think it was the best of his career. Vyacheslav Borshev is not the most well-rounded lightweight fighter. So I would say, if you guys want to prove to me that Chase Hooper is the white boy Charles do Bronx, then let's give him Charles do Bronx, Lil Bro, Elvis Brenner. As we know, Elvis Brenner is an absolute dog. He works with shoot to box, so he has his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rounds. And I would say Elvis Brenner is one of, if the most well-rounded striker and kickboxer that Chase Hooper has ever fought. Vyacheslav Borshev was the most decorated kickboxer that Chase Hooper has ever fought. But as we saw, Chase Hooper was able to take care of Vyacheslav quite handily. So I think a well-rounded savage like Elvis Brenner will drag Chase Hooper into deep waters, and it'll really show us where Chase Hooper is at in terms of the killers just outside of the lightweight top 15. Though I do think they are going to protect Chase a little bit. I think they understand that he has some marketing potential, so they want to build him up a little bit more. So I think they're actually going to go in the direction of like possibly a Jared Gordon. Now, I think Jared Gordon would actually be a more favorable matchup for Chase Hooper, simply because Jared Gordon is a little bit older, doesn't have the most developed game on the ground. So that would be a very good realistic fight to build up Chase Hooper with. But the fight that I personally would like them to make, a fight that I think is perfectly style matched and perfectly skill matched until we see it happen, of course. Chase Hooper versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. Not only is Paddy the Baddy a wild striker on the feet and a wild grappler on the ground, Chase Hooper will like to get into that sort of chaotic scramble of a fight. I would really like to see how it plays out on the ground with those two. And other than that, Chase Hooper also has this budding star potential. So a matchup with Paddy the Baddy would really create some big noise, and we would get to see who is the most awkward savage in the lightweight division. But moving on to Carlos Ulberg. Now, he got away with a 12-second knockout over Alonzo Menafield here, and the light heavyweight division is quite scarce right now for fresh competition, and a lot of people are booked to already fight each other. I would say the most obvious choice for Ulberg right now would be Anthony Smith, given that Anthony is number 10 and Alonzo was number 11 in the rankings. So it only makes sense for Ulberg to make that slight jump back up. And I think Anthony Smith is at a point in his career now where he's looking to just get paychecks, fight against these young up-and-comers, and really prove his veteran status. But if he's going up into the rankings and looking for a higher-ranked matchup, then I would like to see Carlos Ulberg up against Mirzakhanov. He's undefeated, density maxer, also breaking into the top 15, and I think they would put on a really entertaining scrap. We're going to end this off with Diego Ferreira. Diego Ferreira upset a lot of people after beating Mateusz Rebecki, really showed what a tough veteran he still is at this day and age in 2024. Ferreira is not known to be the most exciting fighter, but as we've seen, he's a scrapper and he's a gamer. I think he would be an amazing bounce back fight for Matt Frevola. As we know, Matt Frevola likes to get into the pocket, and he is a wrestler as well. So Diego Ferreira will have those opportunities to pull reversals, go for submissions, and also see how things play out on the feet with Frevola. So I think that would be a very fun, competitive matchup. But if they're looking to feed Diego Ferreira another up-and-coming dog, I would really like to see him put up against Yoel El Fenomeno Alvarez. Alvarez, to me, is like the more mature, better version of Ignacio Bahamondes. But it's been a very long time since Alvarez has been in the octagon. I think he's been dealing with several issues, but he's been looking to break into the top 15, and a win over a guy like Diego Ferreira is a perfect way to get yourself a shot for those top 15 rankings. So yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. Like, comment, subscribe on the fucking video, dogs. But this is Bettrmma. You guys already know what it is. Giving you the best MMA takes. Peace.